Hello again, time for a new video. I'm sure I've talked about this to some extent in the past, maybe even dealt with it a few times, but let's talk about communication and its value today. I may be running out of ideas, so if you have any, feel free to suggest one in the comments so I can discuss that. But let's start with communication and its value for today at least. See, communication is essential to the functioning of states, communities, and individuals. It doesn't matter at what level you're looking at, it's important to have proper communication. Countries need proper information to make wise decisions, the individuals need the same, and if a community is going to agree on something to, say, do an action, let's say they want to build something, well, they're going to need proper information about things for that as well. Maintaining a state and its apparatus requires trust. Knowing where funds are going is essential to that as well. This means that there must be proper communication between the state, the people, and the specific individuals inside the state that work in specific areas. Corruption often takes its root where they don't have that. When you can safely say, shift around some money and put it to your account while someone else is looking elsewhere, well then, quite a few people will do it, especially if there are incentives to do so. But you need that trust, so you need communication and for people to know, okay, here's how much is going somewhere, here's where they're getting it, and here is how it's going to be used. You need that to effectively secure the state and its apparatus for trust. Because that way, when people are worried about corruption, they can look and say, okay, things look in order. Even if it doesn't necessarily reduce corruption, which it should help with either way, it does at least calm people down, which is very useful, especially if the state does want to start purging corruption from its ranks. Something I would argue for. Whether it be now, later, getting rid of corruption is beneficial. But for communities in particular, if communication is lacking, then breakdowns of trust can occur. Much as the state relies on trust, so too do communities, since they are a bunch of individuals working together willingly. If people don't have proper communication, then trust breaks down, yes, but also it increases the likelihood of violence. Think about it. Let's say there's a dispute between two people. They're not communicating properly and tensions flare. If one of them, or either both of them could do it, has any level of a weapon, could be a bat, could be a gun, could be even their fists. Some people are crazy like that. They may well attack the other person over the dispute that is unresolved, which creates a lot of issues. And so, it creates a big problem. When trust breaks down, a lot of people resort to other methods, force being a very common one. So if you want to have a more diplomatic situation where people negotiate and proper rulings are worked out, then you're going to need that trust, and to build that trust, you need open and clear communication. People need to know what's going on, why is there a conflict, how do they resolve it, and by what method they're going to resolve it. Because if that ain't clear, people will pick it for themselves, and oftentimes it won't be a pleasant one. Furthermore, when it comes to individuals, they need effective communication to achieve what they desire, to build trust, and just have day-to-day decision-making function as intended. In order to make a proper decision, you need information. How do you get information? Communication. You can't always just look up on Google or through a book what you need to know. Sometimes you have to ask people, and oftentimes it is quicker to ask. So you need effective communication. It needs to be transparent and effective in order to properly function. If it isn't, then people are going to struggle. And if people struggle and they can't get proper information from someone because their communication is opaque or otherwise lacks in effective communication, well, they're going to have issues. They're going to distrust each other. Again, tensions will flare and escalate. And if people can't do what they need to do, then how can they achieve what they desire? If you can't get your necessities out of the way, make your day-to-day decisions, make sure everything's in order, how do you properly pursue your ambitions? You can't. And so you need, in order to have an effective life, proper communication. You need it. It is essential. And that is where things like honesty really help people, because if everyone's honest, well, the communication will be effective because they know what's going on. It'll be transparent since you're not hiding anything, or at the very least hiding less. And It will allow for people to have the information they need to make proper decisions. As well as that, if you believe someone to be honest, you're going to trust them more, and so it's just better overall for people. Now, of course, that said, 100% honesty is almost certainly not going to happen. People will lie on occasion. Just sheer odds with how long people live, it's just going to have at least one lie. But still, pursuing greater honesty at the bare minimum, seeking to be less and less deceitful and more open and honest, is still very useful. And it makes every aspect of communication far easier because, well, when you're playing a game of telephone, it's one thing for things just to get lost in translation. Sometimes you hear things wrong, sometimes you don't remember exacts, so you paraphrase and it's not quite accurate. That can happen, but it's even worse when it's an intentional lie. Because then, not only does the person have to recognize it's a lie and adjust, which they have no way of knowing what the original statement was, but also, it's going through their perception. They may forget some things may get muddled, and when they communicate to someone else, not only is the lie messing with what they're saying, but so is all the natural human error that tends to come with it. And so for effective communication, you need to get over that hurdle. You want communication to be as transparent as possible and as efficient as you can, especially when it comes to reporting in on things. If you have an assignment, you want to know when it's due, how to do it, and what methods they can afford to do. In college, for example, when you get an assignment, your questions should always center around, if you don't know, alright, when's the paper or other assignment due? What do I have to do? How can I do it? Those are the three things you need to know. For a job, very similar. You want to achieve a task, basically the same. Friendships and other things, it's slightly different because you're not just purely task-oriented. Part of it's also maintaining the status quo of the group, trying to avoid infighting, and basically just keeping the peace. In such a case, your communication will be more focused on just easing the minds of people if it gets too hard, while simultaneously talking and learning about each other so you can continue to build your rapport and maintain the circumstances. Now, of course, to some extent, friendships are transactional. If you like a person and you hang out with them because you like them, you're getting something out of that. And if they like you and hang out with you, they're getting something out of that, so it's a transaction. But of course, people view it more than that due to emotional reasons, and that is fine. But it does mean that fundamentally communication still has its role of efficiency and effectiveness. You still want to make sure that the person is entertained and you are entertained as well. That you enjoy each other's company. That is the objective. Or in the case where your friend is trying to help you, or you them, making sure they get the help they need is important. And if you don't know how, finding someone else who does know, and then communicating it to your friend, is very important. With communication, the biggest thing you gotta remember is that when you want something to function, it needs to work efficiently and effectively. It needs to be transparent. When you have a wire, you want the electricity to flow through with as little interruption as possible to properly fuel that which needs it. It's the same for individuals, communities, and states when it comes to communication. The communication is those wires. The information that you need is that electricity, and the people are the ones on the receiving and the transmitting ends. So, that's what communication functions as. It is the bridge, and so it is insanely valuable. Think about it for a second. Imagine a world where people couldn't properly make decisions. Think of one without proper communication, where everyone's hiding everything and people don't know exactly what's going on. Sure, some people may be able to intuit or learn properly what is going on and adapt to that, but most people are going to be confused, lost, and unable to actually do what they desire, or do what they need to do, both of which are not good situations. And so, to avoid that, we need proper communication. We need transparency, efficiency, and effectiveness. We need to know what's going on when relevant, how we can contribute if necessary, and any other things that are important for us to understand and process. Now, what that is varies depending on the exact situation. Sometimes you need to know less information, sometimes more, but the same rules apply regardless. Of course, this gets muddied with politics because a lot of people like keeping things close to the chest. Fair enough. But for just general day-to-day functioning, proper communication is key. You want things to be efficient and effective. You want things to be transparent, and you want them to work properly. Communication has its value. We shan't underestimate that. I do hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good day.